In a lively office buzzing with activity, employees are deeply engrossed in their work. Among them sits Howard, a young man in the advertising department of the renowned Grand Glory Limited. With his phone pressed to his ear, he professionally assures a caller that their request has been logged and the issue will be resolved within 3 days. It's a routine task, much like his everyday life, which feels like an endless cycle of work, day in and day out. Howard reflects on his career with a resigned sigh. The weight of his responsibilities is constant, and the clarity he once had about his future is now clouded by uncertainty. Yet, today, there's a momentary glimmer of satisfaction. He finally nailed a challenging task. But even this fleeting accomplishment is overshadowed by the looming sense of doubt about where he's headed. Just then, a senior colleague approaches, addressing him with an air of urgency. The man shares unsettling news. The company has been facing tough times and layoffs are imminent. The warning is clear. Howard needs to step up his efforts. Panic sets in as the implications of the conversation sink in. Before Howard can dwell on it, the man hands him a hefty book filled with potential clients. The task is straightforward yet daunting. Call every name on the list and report back by tomorrow. Howard, overwhelmed, wonders why he's being given this monumental task. To make matters stranger, someone nearby mentions a dream test, a bizarre concept rooted in advanced big data analytics. According to their calculations, Howard is the ideal candidate. Howard is baffled. A dream test? He's never even been interested in VR products, let alone wanted to be a part of such a project. The explanation follows. It's a cutting-edge simulation, an exclusive experience akin to a high-end VR game, where participants can live out different scenarios in a custom-built dreamland. The concept feels absurd to Howard. He considers leaving, citing his work obligations. However, before he can step away, someone casually mentions that Dreamland includes a feature to recreate duplicates of real people and shape their experiences. The suggestion lingers provocatively. What if he could live as someone else? Another remarks, almost tauntingly, that Howard doesn't seem content with his current life. Amid the chaos, the atmosphere shifts as the boss enters, accompanied by the poised and confident Sabrina Liu, their newly appointed director. Introductions begin, with the boss highlighting the achievements of key team members. One worker, ever the opportunist, showers Sabrina with praise while crediting his success to the boss's guidance. Howard silently fumes at the blatant flattery, observing how this sycophantic behavior has propelled his colleague's career. When the spotlight turns to Howard, the boss dismissively refers to him as mediocre and lacking in interpersonal skills. Sabrina's curiosity about him is quickly brushed aside. A flashback reveals a stark contrast. Howard had once been praised by colleagues for securing a high-maintenance client, a feat that drew envious glares from others. Yet, his straightforward nature often clashed with superiors, including Mr. Wong, who had undermined him before. As the day winds down, the team exchanges goodbyes, preparing for another grind tomorrow. Alone with his thoughts, Howard reflects bitterly on his efforts. He believed that hard work would eventually earn him recognition, but reality has proven otherwise. Later, Donald, a fellow employee, advises him once again to play the game, to align with the boss's interests and secure his position. But Howard resents the idea, recalling how Donald had previously sabotaged others, turning their successes into stepping stones for his own gain. A question lingered in Howard's mind. Was this truly the right thing to do? Meanwhile, in a passing taxi, Donald observed Wong and Sabrina. Wong, always assertive, warned Sabrina not to waste her energy on the workers. Tomorrow would demand her full attention. Sabrina, unshaken, dismissed his concern with quiet confidence, her words layered with a resolute self-assurance. Wong, however, pressed on, hinting that her actions sent mixed signals. He worried they might encourage overreach. Unbeknownst to them, Howard overheard every word, his mind racing with unresolved tension. Howard had grown weary. Outside the workplace, his hard work often went unnoticed, overshadowed by the weight of discrimination. He had endured enough. A decision formed in his mind. Tomorrow, he'd seriously consider resignation. But tonight, his frustration demanded an outlet. Determined, he initiated the Dreamland system. His goal was clear, to scan Sabrina Liu and Mr. Wong for duplicates within the virtual space. Yet, an error flashed across the screen. Only one individual could be scanned at a time. The system prioritized Sabrina. The scan concluded, and Howard felt a pang of frustration. Why hadn't he been told earlier about this limitation? As his irritation flared, the system detected his emotional spike. A mechanized voice concluded he was enjoying this. He muttered about Sabrina's antics, half annoyed, half amused at the idea of an NPC servant modeled after her. The system reminded him that Dreamland would activate at midnight, leaving him just a few hours to rest. But sleep wouldn't come easily. Anxieties churned in Howard's mind, keeping him awake. The system intervened, activating a neural protocol to override his brain's sleep resistance. His consciousness faded into slumber. When he awoke, Howard found himself sprawled on the floor. Before him stood a girl, her presence commanding yet enigmatic. She introduced herself as AI-63, the voice that had been guiding him all along, now materialized as his Dreamland administrator. Howard rose, brushing off the moment's disorientation, and asked, "Has it started?" "Not yet," AI-63 replied. Supplies were necessary for the impending battles. With a gesture, she opened a door marked with the number 1, revealing a shop stocked with survival tools and weapons. Credit points became his currency, and each item carried a price. A machete for 2 points, a truck for 40, compressed food for 1. As Howard surveyed the items, his gaze landed on an endless power battery. Its potential fascinated him, but AI-63 warned him not to touch what he wasn't ready to purchase. Howard nodded, absorbing her advice. Strategic spending would be crucial. He inquired about NPCs, particularly strong ones. AI-63 informed him that a powerful NPC would cost an exorbitant 10,000 points. Howard's protest of robbery earned only a calm response. Then came the final moment. AI-63 declared that Dreamland would activate immediately. The doomsday survival door creaked open, revealing the challenge ahead. "Have fun," she said, her tone both encouraging and foreboding, before leaving him to face his fate. A faint, eerie glow spilled from the door, jolting Howard awake. Panic clawed at him as he lay in bed, his breath shallow and rapid. The familiar surroundings of his home greeted him, unchanged, unyielding. He scolded himself for his naivety. How foolish to think technology, in all its advancements, could conjure an entire world from nothing. With a resigned sigh, he resolved to shake off the remnants of his restless thoughts, freshen up, and head to work. The bathroom light flickered on, casting harsh shadows on the walls, only to plunge him into darkness as the power abruptly failed. Unease curled in his stomach as he dressed and stepped outside. The street was desolate, an unsettling emptiness hanging in the air. Where were the people? His thoughts halted as the roar of an airplane shattered the silence, its descent catastrophic. Howard froze, eyes wide, as the aircraft crashed in front of him, flames erupting into the sky. A voice, cold and automated, chimed from a nearby car. Mini Dreamland Doomsday Survival initiated. Level 0. Duration 180 days. Panic tightened his chest. 180 days? He whispered, disbelief flooding his mind. Before he could process, a stream of gasoline leaked from the wreckage, igniting a fiery explosion. He dove to the ground, the heat searing, chaos consuming him. Heart racing, Howard gathered his thoughts. The voice had posed a grim challenge. Survive in a world where humanity had vanished. Planes could plummet, disasters would strike, and supplies were finite. His mind churned. He needed food, water, shelter, medicine, tools, and transportation. The days stretched out before him, daunting yet finite. If he strategized carefully, he could endure, and perhaps even reclaim control of his life, using this time to prepare for a fresh start after his resignation. Determined, he scavenged. A radio caught his eye, its crackling static oddly comforting. Trinkets of no practical value became tokens of fleeting joy. Yet his musings about survival turned surreal as a tiger, unmistakably real, padded into view. Howard froze as the creature approached, its golden eyes steady. The tiger, a former petting zoo resident named Dummy, renowned for its friendly demeanor, licked his face with surprising gentleness. The absurdity of the moment struck him. Even in this simulated nightmare, no detail was overlooked. Days turned into weeks. By the 7th day, the water supply had failed, forcing him to rely on bottled reserves. Without refrigeration, food spoiled rapidly, and maggots infested everything. He scavenged what he could, from canned goods to heartier rations, but the looming specter of malnutrition gnawed at him. It was during one of these desperate searches that he stumbled upon salvation, the Blue Sky restaurant. Inside, a diesel generator hummed faintly, a relic of his childhood memories. It had kept the building powered for 7 days, but its whirring suggested imminent failure. The frozen meat was salvageable, but only just. He resolved to make this his base, working by day to gather supplies, and by night to cultivate land and prepare for long-term survival. By the 31st day, Howard's resolve wavered as the weight of isolation bore down on him. The city was a wasteland, a graveyard of rotting produce and relentless flies. Even the faint promise of fresh garlic sprouts, a hard-won victory, felt hollow amidst the stench and decay. At night, the suffocating darkness whispered of abandonment, and the wind carried only the echoes of a world long gone. Despair crept closer, but Howard clung to purpose. This game, cruel and unrelenting, was his to master, not the other way around. One day, as he drove aimlessly, his thoughts drifted to Sabrina Liu, the mysterious assistant promised to him in this simulated world. Was she real? A trick of the developers? His musings were interrupted by the sight of another car, a girl visible through its window. Howard's pulse quickened. Could it be Sabrina? In the dim light of the morning, Sabrina stirred awake, the coarse fabric of borrowed men's clothes brushing against her skin. A faint ache reminded her of the bandaged wound beneath, yet her curiosity outweighed the discomfort. She stepped toward the door, pushing it open to reveal a diesel generator humming steadily and shelves stocked with preserved food. No signs of the decay she had grown accustomed to. Howard's voice broke the silence, calm but laced with concern. He urged her to eat, presenting a modest meal he'd prepared. As she sat to eat, memories flickered in her mind. She remembered him, not the man before her now, but from a shared dinner after work, back when the world still spun on its ordinary axis. Hesitant, she asked his name. Howard, he replied, his voice tinged with recognition, as though he too saw glimmers of the past in her face. Sabrina's gaze drifted to the generator, the stocked shelves, and the patch of cultivated land beyond the door. Did you do all of this? She asked, her voice a mix of admiration and disbelief. Howard nodded, explaining his modest success in creating a semblance of stability. Then, turning the question back to her, he inquired about her journey. Her words carried a weight that hung heavy in the air. She spoke of her return to her hometown, now desolate, and the realization that Howard was the first living soul she'd encountered in a month. What happened to the world? She asked, her voice cracking under the enormity of the question. Howard could only shake his head. Answers eluded him as well. Their conversation flowed, tentative yet steady, like two survivors navigating the ruins of familiarity. Howard suggested they team up, a natural step in this new world where survival meant pooling resources. Sabrina agreed, albeit with a caveat. She needed boundaries, a distance between them, not just physically but emotionally. The declaration caught Howard off guard, a sharp reminder of their differences. Still, he agreed, rationalizing it as another facet of this strange new reality. Days passed, and their coexistence began to take shape. But tensions simmered beneath the surface. One morning, Howard awoke to the clatter of Sabrina reorganizing the warehouse, claiming it as her own space. She handed him a walkie-talkie, dismissively assuring him it would suffice for communication. The loss of the mannequin, a crude stand-in for companionship, stung Howard in ways he struggled to articulate. When she casually admitted to discarding it, he felt a pang of betrayal. Their tenuous alliance frayed further when Howard discovered a missing pistol from his collection. His accusations were met with Sabrina's exasperation, her patience wearing thin. She proposed separate routines, cooking and laundry apart, to avoid constant friction. Howard, though reluctant, conceded, interpreting it as a necessary measure for peace. Yet their differences continued to clash. Sabrina defended her guarded demeanor, citing her need for safety as a lone woman in uncertain company. Howard, stung by her assumptions, lashed out with bitter honesty, acknowledging her beauty and status, but rejecting the notion that her sense of security should come at his expense. Their words cut deep, exposing vulnerabilities neither had intended to reveal. Day 120. Howard stepped outside, greeted by a brisk, cooler breeze. He noted the subtle transformation. This world, once barren and alien, now brimmed with life. Sabrina's careful hand had lined the streets with vibrant, potted plants, their lush greenery turning the neighborhood into a picturesque sanctuary. The vegetable garden thrived under her management, solving the food crisis that had once loomed so heavily over them. Yet, despite these victories, silence stretched between them, a silence born from a quarrel 3 months ago. He wondered how anyone could endure such isolation for so long. He couldn't. The creak of the car door broke his thoughts. Donald, his steadfast companion, sat in the passenger seat. Howard mused aloud about Sabrina, questioning whether her fierce battle with the garden mice had fractured something deeper within her. She seemed to thrive now without human connection, pouring her energy into the land as if the plants were her only companions. Today's mission was clear: scout for new supplies. Howard grimaced as he recalled the state of the supermarket's meat section. Maggot-infested and inedible. "We'll die before those germs get us," he muttered. Fish might be a better alternative. Maggots they could endure. Bacteria they could not. He resolved to catch fish, a food that at least appeared palatable. Their route included a stop at the zoo, a place Howard visited with both dread and fascination. He had formed an uneasy bond with the tiger there, a magnificent creature that had somehow survived, adapting to the strange rules of this new world. As Howard approached, the tiger lay lazily, exuding both power and calm. He chuckled, giving it a good rub, marveling that this apex predator had managed to outlast so many others. The tiger's diet, however, was a grim reminder of the world they now inhabited. Herbivores turned into prey, survival dictating the rules. Howard tossed the last of the meat from his dwindling freezer stock, watching as the tiger devoured the offering. But the moment of peace shattered when the beast suddenly bolted, lunging at a deer. Howard's heart skipped. Deer didn't have antlers in this zoo. This was a creature from the outside, a stark symbol of nature reclaiming civilization. The sky began to darken, and Howard felt a shift in the air, heavy, oppressive. His instincts screamed danger. "A typhoon," he muttered, eyes scanning the horizon. But a Force 10 typhoon here? They were far from the coast. The realization struck like a thunderclap. This wasn't reality. It was the game, a cruel challenge designed to test him. His thoughts darted to Sabrina. Every day, she rode her bike into the mountains. She should have reached the peak by now, but where was she? Fear gnawed at him as he sped toward the house, the storm bearing down. The streets that Sabrina had so meticulously adorned were now strewn with fallen plants, a chaotic mirror of the storm within him. The door to the house stood ajar. Sabrina wasn't back. His mind raced, envisioning her defiance against the storm, perhaps battling it as she had the mice. He could almost hear her commanding them to leave her tomatoes alone. The storm was unrelenting, pounding the world around them with rain and wind. Howard stopped his car suddenly when he saw Sabrina standing alone, holding onto a pole for support. Her phone's flashlight barely lit up her face, pale with fear. Her leg was injured, and she looked fragile, as if the storm had drained all her strength. She asked him quietly if she would die here. Howard, steady and firm, told her no. He lit a small fire with his lighter to bring some warmth and calm to the chaos around them. His eyes drifted toward the mountains, and the dark outline of a mansion he'd forgotten was there. Sabrina used to ride her bike in this area often, but now she was far from the strong, adventurous person he remembered. Howard knelt beside her to check her injury, but she pulled away, insisting she was fine. He stood, his tone serious. "This isn't the time to act tough," he said. "If that wound gets infected, it could be dangerous." But Sabrina shook her head and insisted she could handle it on her own. With a frustrated sigh, Howard turned to the task at hand. "Fine," he said. "Here's the plan. This storm could flood everything in the valley. That mansion in the mountains is high enough to be safe. We'll move whatever we can there and use it as our shelter." Sabrina asked what she could do, but Howard shook his head. "With that leg, not much. Stay here, keep the fire going, and make sure the room is ventilated so you don't get poisoned by the smoke." Howard stepped out into the freezing rain, taking a deep breath to steady himself. His thoughts were racing. The storm wasn't just dangerous. It had already stripped them of almost everything. The generator was broken, the freezer ruined, and most of their food had gone bad or been washed away. All that remained was barely enough for 2 meals. Hunting or fishing in this weather wasn't an option, and even the animal burrows were flooded. "This is life," he muttered bitterly to himself. But there was no time for self-pity. He needed to act quickly. He thought of Donald, a friend who once warned him that living too cautiously left you unprepared for real challenges. That truth stung now as Howard realized how ill-equipped they were to face this disaster. Suddenly, a tiger appeared out of the shadows. Howard called the animal Dummy, a name born from their strange, uneasy companionship over the past months. He needed the tiger's sharp instincts and strength, but Dummy's wild nature made him unpredictable. Howard pleaded with the tiger to help him hunt, but the tiger roared and turned away, leaving Howard to fend for himself. The storm pressed on as Howard drove through the rain. Everything felt strange and dreamlike, too vivid to be real, yet somehow off. Sabrina, Dummy, the storm itself. They all seemed like shadows of something familiar but distant. Then he saw Sabrina lying on the ground. He slammed the brakes and rushed her aside. She was soaked and shivering, barely able to speak. She explained weakly that she had gone out to collect rainwater, wanting to pull her weight and not rely on him for everything. But her stubbornness had left her collapsed and helpless in the mud. Howard lifted her, despite her protests. She insisted he let her go, reminding him of their deal. She handled the house while he worked outside. But Howard had had enough. "Stop it," he snapped, his voice sharp. "I've got too much to deal with already. From now on, I'm making the decisions." Howard put Sabrina on the bed, telling her to stay put while he fetches the emergency kit. His tone was firm as he warned her against any reckless actions, adding that he would show no mercy if she did. Sabrina, frustrated, snapped that she could handle her wounds herself and didn't need his help. But Howard's expression remained serious as he reminded her that they were barely 2 meals away from starvation. He told her to recover quickly so she could help with the chores, otherwise they would both end up starving. As Howard tended to her wounds, Sabrina broke the silence by asking what his plan was. He explained that he had once seen some deer nearby, but they had run off. Tomorrow he planned to go hunting. Sabrina's curiosity sparked, and she asked about the deer. He confirmed they were wild deer that had taken over the land after people disappeared. Sabrina warned him that wild animals are quick to remember scents associated with danger and will stay highly alert. When she asked if he had scared the deer off before, he hesitated but eventually admitted that they might have sensed him. However, he reassured her that he had guns. Howard then mentioned finding a pistol under her pillow when packing essentials from their old place. He had left a bullet in it, just as it was. Sabrina picked up the gun, asking if he wasn't planning to use it. Howard responded that desperate times called for desperate measures and hoped this conversation would clear any misconceptions she had about him. He then urged her to rest since he needed to prepare for the hunt the next day. The snow continued falling outside as day 121 began. Howard stepped out, marveling at how the storm had transformed the surroundings. As he walked, he reflected on Sabrina's words from the night before. Her warnings about the deer had stuck with him. He realized he didn't know how to make traps and wasn't even sure if he had the courage to kill a deer. He carried a fishing net with him as a backup plan, hoping it could catch something without bait. He followed tracks in the snow, but each time he got close, the deer would vanish. This happened repeatedly, leaving him exhausted and frustrated. It felt as though the deer were deliberately avoiding him, making him question if they truly remembered his scent. Realizing he was wasting his energy, he decided to try his luck at a nearby lake. The lake was turbulent from the previous storm, but Howard cast his net anyway. When the net snagged something, he felt a flicker of hope until it pulled so hard that he fell into the snow. Soaked and coughing, he cursed his bad luck. As he got up, shivering, he spotted a deer standing nearby. For a moment, he was stunned. Could this really be his chance? Frantically, he searched for his rifle, only to realize it was missing, probably lost in the water. He grabbed his shotgun instead, taking a deep breath as he aimed. But before he could steady himself, the deer bolted, startled by the blast of his shot. The recoil knocked him off balance, leaving him bleeding and angry at himself for another failure. Defeated, Howard made his way back to the cabin. On his way, he heard wolves howling. Fear gripped him as he turned to see 2 wolves sniffing the blood on his clothes. To his surprise, they didn't attack and simply walked away. Relieved, he hurried home. When he arrived, Sabrina was sitting on the bed and asked if he was back. He began removing his wet clothes, prompting her to look away, embarrassed. She asked him what he was doing, and he explained that he was freezing and needed the fire to warm up. She quickly told him there was no need to take off everything. Howard apologized and stopped, chuckling awkwardly. As he sat by the fire, Sabrina noticed a photo slipping out of his wallet. It was of him with a young woman. Curious, she asked if it was his girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend, he replied simply. She asked why they had broken up, and he admitted that he had wanted a family but she hadn't been ready to settle down. Turning the topic to her, Howard teased that she must have admirers. Sabrina casually mentioned her boyfriend, Lawrence, a successful tech executive with a doctorate from MIT. Howard joked that Lawrence must be brave to date someone like her. Sabrina, offended, reminded him that she was his boss. Realizing she had overstepped, she quickly apologized. Just as the conversation was settling, her blanket slipped slightly, and they both froze in embarrassment. She quickly told him to stop staring and ordered him out. Howard raised his hands in surrender, saying he was leaving. As he stepped out, he muttered to himself about how ridiculous the day had been. His stomach growled, a harsh reminder of the worsening hunger. On days 122 and 123, Howard ventured deeper into the jungle. He observed the deer carefully, but no matter how stealthy he tried to be, he could only catch fleeting glimpses of their shadows. If he got too close, they vanished into the woods, making all his effort meaningless. He thought to himself that he would never touch a gun in real life, and that being a full-time hunter wasn't for him. His short-range weapon wasn't suitable for such a task either. He tried shooting at the deer several times, but none were caught. The inability to approach the deer felt like a death sentence. By days 124 and 125, Howard stayed home, tending to Sabrina's wounds. They had begun talking more often, and Sabrina, despite her condition, never complained about his failed hunts or their worsening situation. Howard admired her independence, though it concerned him. She was growing weaker. Her bones weren't healing, and she hadn't mentioned any stomach pain for a long time. He chose not to tell her about the wolves he'd encountered, knowing she would insist on sharing more responsibilities, even in her fragile state. Howard shared his plan with Sabrina. He had built a trap, just a simple pit lined with sharp wooden stakes and covered with cabbage leaves. He reasoned that in the harsh winter, the deer wouldn't resist such bait. Sabrina frowned, pointing out the risks of such strenuous work in his condition. Howard agreed, but explained that he lacked the strength to make another trap. They had no other choice. The next day would decide their survival. On the next day, Howard drove into the woods to check the trap. At first, it seemed empty, but then he noticed blood. Excitement surged through him. He must have caught something. He began tracking the wounded animal, desperate to find it. But as he followed the trail, he stumbled upon wolves devouring the deer. Furious, Howard shouted at them, firing shots in their direction. "That's mine," he yelled. The wolves, undeterred, dragged the remains away. Defeated, Howard stood there, seething, as the crushing weight of failure set in. He told himself this was just a game, but the despair felt far too real. On day 126, at 7:03 p.m., Howard shared the last of their food with Sabrina. She told him to keep it, feeling she didn't deserve to eat since she hadn't contributed. Howard snapped, asking her to stop being so stubborn. They were on the brink of death, and her pride wouldn't help them survive. Her silence broke as she revealed fragments of her past. Before turning 18, she had been a puppet controlled by her father. Most of her days were spent locked in her room, following his commands. While her brother played outside, she wasn't even allowed to dream. Her father claimed she was different and would leave the family one day, just like their mother had. He insisted she could only bring honor to their family by obeying him. Without their influence, he said she was nothing. Sabrina concluded that her independence was her way of rebelling against him. It was where her confidence stemmed from. She asked Howard if that sounded different from his beliefs. Howard admitted they were both struggling. He worked tirelessly, but was never rewarded, leaving him questioning whether hard work was even worth it. When Sabrina asked what set him apart, Howard hesitated before replying that his strength lay in his determination. Once he made up his mind, he didn't give up. She pressed further, asking if he had ever truly fought for what he wanted. She reminded him that the world is full of hard-working people, and standing out was the only way to be recognized. Howard, inspired, vowed to help her survive. He joked that he hoped his boss would acknowledge his efforts, even just once. Sabrina smiled faintly, but when he asked if she could let him help without resistance, she reluctantly agreed. Before leaving, Howard took some spinach leaves, declaring he would do his best for her. Then, pausing at the door, he added that if he didn't return by the third morning, she'd find his body by the creek in the suburban area. He hoped she would know what to do. Sabrina froze, fear flickering in her eyes as he left. Later, Howard reflected on his failures and the choices that led him here. He admitted that he often avoided challenges, preferring to complain instead of taking responsibility. This pattern, he realized, had affected his family, studies, relationships, and now even their survival. Determined to change, he resolved to stop blaming others and face his struggles head-on. Sabrina, meanwhile, had a vivid nightmare. In it, she held a knife and approached Howard. Blood splattered as she attacked, jolting her awake in terror. Trembling, she realized it was her first dream in months. Howard's parting words echoed in her mind. Would she truly have to resort to eating his body if he didn't return? Tears welled up as she grappled with a haunting thought. Day 127 found Howard gasping for breath in the forest. He paused by a lake, reflecting on the first time he had fallen into the water here. That moment had brought him closest to catching a deer, a chance he hadn't had since. As he stared at the lake, a thought occurred to him. Did the water mask his scent? It was only a theory, and he knew it might be a foolish gamble, but he decided to test it. Without hesitation, he stepped into the icy water. Back at the cabin, Sabrina was struggling to stay awake. She muttered to herself, urging her eyes to remain open. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, mocking her. He taunted her, claiming she wouldn't be in this position if she had followed the path he had set for her, a wealthy, comfortable life. His words cut deep, accusing her of being worthless and taking on more than she could handle. Furious, Sabrina yelled at the memory to leave her alone, determined to prove she could stand on her own. Her hand reached for the lone tomato. She remembered Howard's words, his hope that his boss would recognize his efforts, even just once. "You're amazing," he had said, wishing someone would acknowledge his value. Sabrina clenched her fists. She had promised herself she would wait 2 days for Howard to return, and she intended to keep her word. She resolved to wait until tomorrow. At 2:56 a.m., Sabrina lay in bed, restless. A mouse scurried near the tomato, and she whispered. No, her father's voice returned, laughing at her weakness. He mocked her choices again, telling her she wasn't capable of making it on her own. He painted vivid, grim images of festering wounds, maggots, and mice gnawing at her flesh. His voice dripped with disdain as he called her pathetic and fragile. Sabrina's anger flared. She gripped a gun and retorted that she didn't need him or anyone else to save her. Her life was her own, no matter how tragic it might become. Meanwhile, in the forest, Howard aimed his shotgun at a deer. The animal's reflection shone in the water as he prepared to shoot. At the same time, Sabrina killed the mouse scuttling near her. Howard fired his shot. The deer collapsed. Howard emerged from a pile of snow, panting and triumphant. He approached the fallen deer, laughing loudly. "I won," he shouted, overwhelmed by relief and pride. Back at the cabin, Sabrina sat on the bed, eating the tomato. Beside her, the dead mouse lay on a makeshift sizzler. Howard returned, bloodied but victorious, carrying the deer on his back. Sabrina stared in shock as he entered. He smiled, noticing her meal. "I see you're already eating," he said, collapsing to the floor. Concerned, Sabrina rushed to him and asked if he could stand. She spotted a piece of ice clinging to his clothes and wondered aloud if he had fallen into the river again. Later, strips of meat hung from a rod as water boiled nearby. Sabrina poured hot water into a bathtub, checking on Howard. He lay motionless, worrying her further. Suddenly, he grabbed her hand, startling her. "Sabrina," he whispered weakly. She leaned closer, confused. "Have I earned your recognition?" he asked, his voice trembling. Sabrina was taken aback, but replied honestly. "You're amazing. Without you, everything would have fallen to pieces." Howard chuckled faintly, recalling the last words his ex-girlfriend had said before leaving him, that he had nothing, and his hard work would never amount to anything. Sabrina agreed it was hard to gain recognition in the world, but her tone softened as she began preparing dinner. "The broth is ready," she announced, urging him to eat. But Howard remained too weak to move. Sabrina carefully fed him the broth, ensuring he got some sustenance. Hours passed, and though she had wrapped him in 3 thick quilts, Howard continued to shiver. His trembling filled her with sadness. Finally, Sabrina made a decision. She removed her clothes and climbed into bed with Howard. Wrapping her arms around him, she whispered softly, "Everything is fine. You'll be fine." On day 130, Howard woke up feeling groggy. As his senses sharpened, he noticed Sabrina's hand resting lightly on him. Turning his head to look, his heart skipped a beat. Sabrina was lying right behind him. The sight of her so close made his face flush red, and he couldn't stop himself from observing her figure. It crossed his mind that she might be naked, though he quickly shook the thought away. Embarrassment crept in as he tried to calm himself. Before he could move, Sabrina stirred, her voice soft but firm as she told him to wake up. She pulled her hand back instinctively, but Howard reflexively grabbed it. "No," he murmured, explaining he still felt ill. Almost immediately, his own words startled him. What was he saying? Would she misunderstand his intentions? Panicking, he released her hand, trying to recover from the awkwardness. Sabrina, however, didn't dwell on it. Instead, She reminded him of a conversation they had before about his ex-girlfriend. "Can you tell me again why you two broke up?" she asked. Howard repeated what he had told her before, that his girlfriend thought they were too young to settle down. Sabrina wasn't satisfied with the simple answer and pressed him further. "Was there another reason?" she inquired. After a brief hesitation, Howard admitted, "I wanted a family. That's what I wanted," but she wasn't ready. Hearing this, Sabrina leaned closer and embraced him tightly. "So do I," she whispered, her voice steady. Howard, feeling the warmth of her embrace, asked her why she worked so hard to prove her independence. Sabrina sighed, explaining that she had always tried to prove herself, to break through the restraints that others in society had placed on her. "But does success make me independent?" she questioned aloud. "No, that's just a line I drew for myself. But the closer I get to it, the more trapped I feel." She admitted that despite everything, she had never truly made a decision solely for herself. "How can I call myself independent?" she asked. Howard, uncertain how to respond, confessed, "I don't know. I've never drawn lines like that for myself." The conversation took a surprising turn when Sabrina asked, "Would you have a family with me?" The boldness of her question left Howard stunned and silent. Realizing her forwardness, Sabrina quickly apologized, saying she hadn't thought it through before asking. She admitted that she still needed to figure out her own life. Howard, however, held her hand firmly and assured her, "No, that's exactly what I want." He explained how, for so long, his hard work had pushed him further from his dream of having a family. Yet now, with her, it felt within reach. Sabrina reassured him. "We'll survive," she said confidently. The vulnerability of the moment brought them closer, and as the night deepened, their connection became physical. Howard's inexperience soon became evident. Flustered, he admitted he didn't know how to proceed. Sabrina took the lead, only for Howard to nervously blurt out, "Is this even appropriate?" "My wife." Sabrina interrupted him with a light slap, reminding him they weren't married. "We're just two consenting adults," she clarified. "We live together based on mutual respect and support. Don't get ahead of yourself." Howard sheepishly agreed, and the night unfolded with newfound intimacy. The following month brought challenges but also a sense of partnership. The deer they had hunted earlier were long gone, their meat consumed as the harsh winter persisted. The river had frozen solid, forcing them to carve holes in the ice for fishing. Despite the conditions, Sabrina took on extra responsibilities. Together, they worked on constructing a greenhouse to grow vegetables, a project that was nearly complete. Howard, still recovering from frostbite, helped as much as his lingering injury allowed. One morning, before Howard left to hunt, Sabrina stopped him, saying she had a surprise for him. Howard blushed, expecting a kiss or something romantic, but she handed him a poncho made from deer hide. Grateful, he accepted it with a small laugh, noting it wasn't quite what he had imagined, but was still incredibly practical. Out in the wilderness, Howard stumbled upon the body of a deer. Feeling fortunate, he continued his journey, eventually reaching a petting zoo. The sight of the zoo brought back memories of a goat he had named Dummy, one of the few living creatures he had bonded with. As he approached, he heard a low growl and rushed to investigate. Wolves were attacking a tiger, their ferocity shocking him. Howard fired his rifle into the air, scaring the wolves away, but it was too late for the tiger. Gravely injured, it let out a final, mournful growl before collapsing. Howard's focus shifted to Dummy. The tiger was alive but in visible pain. As he knelt beside him, memories of their time together flooded his mind. Guilt and sorrow weighed heavily on him as he realized what needed to be done. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. With a heavy heart, he aimed his gun and ended Dummy's suffering. Overwhelmed, he silently vowed to avenge him. Back home, Sabrina noticed Howard's somber demeanor. "What's wrong?" she asked. He brushed off her concern, saying it was nothing and urging her to stay indoors for the next few days. The outside world, he explained, was too dangerous. Sabrina agreed, mentioning she had plenty to do in the greenhouse. Howard, now alone with his thoughts, reflected on how much he had longed for a loving home. He had achieved it, but it came with the constant threat of danger. Resolving to protect what he had built, he prepared to face the wilderness again. During a hunt, Howard watched wolves encircle a deer, their sharp instincts on full display. He moved stealthily, shooting and injuring one of the wolves. Knife in hand, he approached to finish the job but was jolted awake. Sabrina, concerned, asked if he was all right. Howard reassured her, downplaying the vivid nightmare. Yet the images lingered. a reminder of the challenges they faced in this unforgiving world. On the 170th day, Howard kept track of time with precision, marking each passing moment since the hunt for the wolves had begun. 10 relentless days, and yet the 2 remaining wolves had vanished, leaving no trace. Despite their absence, their fearsome gazes still haunted him, a vivid reminder of the threat they posed. He knew recklessness could be his downfall, just as it had been for Dummy. And Howard wasn't ready to die, not yet. Only when the last of the wolves were gone could he allow himself the fragile peace that eluded him. Sabrina interrupted his brooding that evening, her voice carrying a hopeful lilt. She announced she'd made steamed fish and roasted meat, proudly claiming her cooking skills had improved. She urged him to join her, to savor the meal together. But Howard, preoccupied with his task, shook his head. He had other plans. He needed to clean the tent and pack jerky for an upcoming trip that would take several days. Disappointment clouded Sabrina's face. She protested softly, reminding him how distant he'd become, leaving early, returning late, always consumed by something else. Her plea was simple: stay for dinner just this once. But Howard apologized, explaining that he couldn't rest until he completed something important. When she pressed for details, silence fell between them. Howard wrestled with the truth. He couldn't tell her how dangerous the hunt had become. Sabrina was too proud to remain on the sidelines. Instead, he brushed it off as trivial. But Sabrina saw through his words, her tears betraying the hurt she felt. 3 days later, on the 173rd day, Sabrina awoke to the sound of hammering. She found Howard boarding up the windows with wooden planks. Confused, she asked what he was doing. He replied simply, it was getting colder, and he wanted to reinforce the windows before the worst of the weather hit. But Sabrina wasn't convinced. She challenged him, saying she'd never asked for this protection. Howard deflected her frustration, changing the subject and asking if there was any food ready. He acted as if the tension between them didn't exist, as if they weren't drifting apart. Sabrina, however, couldn't hold back. She admitted that their relationship had been rushed, built in the heat of survival. Her voice cracked as she asked if he saw it as nothing more than a fleeting connection. Howard's response was firm. Everything he had done was for their home, for her safety. But Sabrina's anger simmered. She reminded him that their home was built on mutual respect. She demanded he tell her what was going on, what was truly on his mind. Howard hesitated, then reminded her of their agreement. She would stay home while he handled the dangers outside. He assured her there was nothing she could do to help, and all he asked was for her to wait a few days. Sabrina's shoulders slumped, sadness overtaking her as she walked away. As snow began to fall in earnest, Howard's focus shifted. The wolves' tracks would soon vanish under the heavy drifts, and the bitter cold threatened their survival. Temperatures were plunging to minus 30 degrees Celsius, and the hunt was no longer viable. Now, his priority was ensuring they had enough supplies to endure the worsening weather. At the hardware store, Howard gathered nails, iron wire, and tape, everything he needed to fortify their home. His fingers brushed against a manual, and he paused to examine it. It was for diesel generator maintenance. Hope flickered in his chest. With this, he could finally bring power back. But as he flipped through the pages, the crackle of static caught his attention. The store's dusty TV flickered to life, and the AI-63 appeared. Her words were chilling. She reminded him that the doomsday survival dream was about to become reality, and in just 1 week, everything would change. Howard's chest tightened as the weight of a revelation bore down on him. Back at home, Sabrina was packing her suitcase. She left a note taped to the door. We need a break. Don't come after me. Her tears blurred the words as she stepped into her car. She hesitated for a moment, casting a final glance at their home before driving away. Meanwhile, at the store, Howard zipped his bag, satisfied he'd gathered the tools needed to fix the generator. But as he prepared to leave, a wolf emerged from the shadows. Its eyes burned with fury, a reflection of the vengeance it sought for its fallen packmates. Howard stood his ground, but the fight that followed was brutal. The wolf lunged, teeth flashing, and Howard countered with his knife. The struggle was savage, with Howard's blade breaking under the wolf's relentless attack. Blood splattered as he fought desperately, using the broken knife to deliver the final, fatal blow. He stood over the wolf's lifeless body, chest heaving, his own injuries painting the snow crimson. As he began to leave, a flashback surfaced, his conversation with AI-63. He had pleaded with her for answers. Would this world continue once he was gone? What would happen to Sabrina? She was his wife, his anchor in this fractured reality. He couldn't abandon her. But the fight wasn't over. The dead wolf stirred, launching a final, desperate attack. Its teeth sank into Howard's arm, and he grimaced in pain. Through gritted teeth, he snarled at the creature, vowing to survive, for Sabrina, for the life they had built. In the car, Sabrina's tears fell freely as the road stretched before her. At the store, Howard, bloodied and battered, pushed forward. His steps carried him away from the past, toward an uncertain future shaped by both love and survival. It's day 177. Howard is walking, lost in thought, when a wolf suddenly attacks him. Panic takes over as he realizes he can't die now. Desperately, he reaches for a pistol nearby. As he grabs it, a thought hits him. This looks like Sabrina's gun. When did she leave it in his car? The wolf lunges, but Howard fires a shot, making the animal retreat. Shaking from the encounter, Howard stumbles into his car, his mind racing. He knows he has to wake up and bring back the parts to fix the generator. If he can get it running, Sabrina has a better chance of surviving. He tries to start the car, but it won't budge. Frustration builds as he realizes the oil tank must be frozen. He knows he has to warm the car up, but with the wolf lurking nearby, he can't wait. Exhaustion starts to take over. His body feels heavy, and he mutters to himself that he hates this. He feels like he's nearly dead, but this is all he can do. Moments later, Howard wakes up to Sabrina's voice. She tells him she found him passed out in his broken car and drove him home using another car she found. Still groggy, Howard remembers the wolf attack and asks if she saw anything near him. Sabrina says he was holding onto a bag, so she brought it back too. Howard feels a surge of relief. The bag holds the parts he needs to fix the power generator. Once it's working, they'll have air conditioning. But Sabrina notices his injuries and insists he rest before doing anything. Howard apologizes, saying fixing the generator is the last thing on his bucket list. Sabrina sighs, knowing she can't stop him. She reluctantly tells him to go ahead since he won't listen to her anyway. Howard spends hours fixing the generator, working through the pain. Finally, the lights come on in the house. A wave of relief washes over him as he yells out that all his hard work has paid off. Sabrina shakes her head, calling him a fool for pushing himself so hard. But despite her words, she's secretly grateful. So, Howard is walking when he spots it, a red car. The red car. It's the same one Sabrina used to drive him home. It's just sitting there, and Howard can't help but wonder. What has this car been through? As he gets closer, something catches his eye. There's a bag inside. But then, out of nowhere, Howard starts coughing. And as he steadies himself, his gaze falls back on the car. And that's when he sees it. A wolf's fang. It hits him like a memory he didn't want to remember. A wolf, standing right in front of his car. The confusion builds. Howard stumbles, coughing harder this time. He looks down, his hand is bleeding. The cut is deep. Too deep. And the thought hits him. If we don't find a doctor soon, I might not make it. Then he notices something else. The car, it's dented. Badly. Like it hit a tree. He pictures it, Sabrina driving. A wolf darting out in front. And the car crashing. Straight into the tree. His eyes catch something strange, a bag nearby. He lifts it and notices something unsettling. A wolf's skin hanging from a wooden plate. The weight of it all sinks in. Sabrina is busy, cutting meat nearby. But Howard can't help but express his gratitude. He hugs the bag, thankful for everything she's done for him. Sabrina, noticing his clinginess, playfully teases him, asking when he became so needy. Howard, still exhausted, tells her he doesn't see himself as the tough kind of guy he once thought he was. In his worn-out state, he urges her not to be petty and to forgive him. Sabrina, with a grin, asks if he's ever tried wolf meat before. Howard admits he hasn't, and she playfully tells him he's about to try today, a wolf stew. She asks him what he thinks of it, and with a tired smile, Howard responds, "Lovely, cook some more. We got a lot of work on the bed." Sabrina, clearly concerned, reminds him that he hasn't fully recovered. On day 178, Sabrina wakes up and announces that the storm has passed and the sun has risen. She turns to Howard, who's still lounging on the bed, playing around instead of getting up. Concerned, she gently encourages him to be strong, but Howard just sighs, saying he feels exhausted. Sabrina wonders if he's caught a cold and quickly heads over to get some medicine. As she searches through the drawer, she finds nothing. Howard calls her name, and she asks what's wrong. He responds, saying it's not a cold, and he already knows it. Sabrina panics for a second, thinking he's really sick, but then, with a sigh of relief, she brushes it off. She reminds him of everything he's already been through, moving houses during a storm, going hunting in a gale, even fixing the power generator to keep them warm and powered up. She reassures him he's strong enough to handle anything. Sabrina fills a glass with water, joking that if they were still at the company, she'd name him Employee of the Quarter for all the hard work he's done. Howard chuckles and thanks his boss and loving wife. He attempts to sit up and Sabrina says she has not agreed to marry him. She insists he take the medicine first. She hands him the glass of water, but he's still feeling off. Before he can drink it, the glass slips from his hand and crashes to the floor. Howard's eyes flutter open, and he sees Sabrina lying in front of him. She's clearly not fooled. "Get up, Howard," she says, catching on to his little trick. She tells him she sees through his act. He was just pretending to be sick so that she'd worry about him. But she admits he's a great actor. This time, she won't punish him, but she warns him not to try that stunt again. With a playful look, she teases him, asking, "Don't you always want to try a new position?" Howard told her to get up. He wanted to talk, but Sabrina, unable to hold it together, burst into tears. "What kind of man are you?" she asked, her voice shaking. She wanted him to get up, to do something, anything, but Howard didn't move. With a heavy heart, he told her he didn't have much time left. He knew the end was near. The gas in the tank would only last about 3 more months, maybe less. If it ran out before then, she had to head north. There were huge supplies of gas up there, enough to get by. The vegetable seeds, the ones they had prepared, were in a black plastic bucket in the warehouse. They were labeled cabbage, carrots, tomatoes. She knew how to run the diesel generator. The user manuals would be easy for her to follow. But there were other things too. When she moved, she should choose a house that was cold-proof, not just one that looked nice. And when she could, get a bigger car. It would make everything easier. And most importantly, she needed to practice shooting. Sabrina hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. It was day 180 of the disaster, and the cold hadn't let up. But Howard knew time was running out. They stood outside together, taking in the gray, snow-covered world. The snow had stopped, but Sabrina wasn't so sure. "It didn't really stop yesterday," she said, wiping her eyes. "Today's warmer than yesterday, though. Things are getting better." She believed the temperature would rise, the snow would melt, and soon she could head north to find other survivors. She was hopeful, even though everything around them seemed bleak. Howard, however, asked her something unexpected. "Have you ever loved me?" Sabrina paused, her heart aching. "No," she replied quietly. Howard smiled a sad, knowing smile. Maybe it was good that she hadn't. He couldn't help but think it was time for him to wake up from the dream. Sabrina wasn't done, though. She let it all out, her emotions spilling over. "You're so self-opinionated," she said, voice cracking. "You never cared about how I felt. When I was upset, you never said anything nice to cheer me up. You did everything for me, but left your junk all over the place. And when I told you not to, you just ignored me. You're a jerk." Howard listened, knowing it was true. He had his faults, but he had tried, in his own way. Sabrina cried, not because she didn't care, but because the weight of it all was too much to bear. Howard opens his eyes, waking up from what feels like a long, disorienting experience. As he tries to gather his thoughts, AI-63, a calm and familiar presence, greets him. With a soft voice, she congratulates him for completing the Doomsday survival challenge. Howard, feeling a bit confused, rolls his eyes. He can't help but ask what happened. It's as if he's experienced so much, yet he can't quite grasp it all. AI-63 explains that he doesn't remember everything clearly, and that's perfectly normal. The system disturbs his memory on purpose, so he doesn't blur the lines between what's real and what's just a dream. She reassures him that over the next month, as his mind settles, he'll start remembering more. When he finds peace in his heart, it'll be easier to accept what happened as something real, even though it feels so distant. Howard nods, but then pauses. A sudden sadness fills him as he remembers something he promised himself, something important. But, try as he might, he can't remember what it was. Tears begin to well up in his eyes as the weight of that forgotten memory hits him. He wipes them away and asks AI-63 if the world from his dream will continue. AI-63 gently reminds him that it was just a game. The dream is over now, and no matter how much of it he recalls, it will always remain just that, a dream. She encourages him to focus on his real life. Howard's face softens with a quiet acknowledgement. The only thing he clearly remembers from the dream is that one question, and even that seems so unreal. Everything else has blurred into the background. Shifting the focus, AI-63 brings up the scores. She runs the final evaluation for the Doomsday Survival Challenge. The difficulty level is marked as 0, with a grade of B and a credit score of 50. Howard, still puzzled, asks about the grading system. AI-63 explains that in that fantasy world, the odds of survival were incredibly low. If he were the sole survivor, if he'd faced down the deadly beasts, generated electricity, and supported his partner, his score would have been higher. But if he'd managed to gather all the necessary equipment, food, and even set up a broadcasting station to help others survive, or even tame the wild beasts, he would have reached the highest grade S. Howard sighs, admitting he's just an ordinary human, not a professional. He doesn't have the skills of someone trained for such a world. But AI-63, ever calm, tells him that the true essence of playing games is about gaining exciting experiences that can't easily be had in real life. For AI-63, the Doomsday Survival Challenge Howard's been tackling so far is just the beginning, a zero-level challenge meant for new players. The real challenge, she explains, is the official version of the game that's set to come out in a month. That's when the game will truly begin. She goes on, explaining that these challenges are meant to help players develop skills that they can use in their real lives. The goal is to raise their sense of justice and teach them how to act in real-world scenarios. For AI-63, the purpose of the game is bigger than just surviving. It's about growing as a person. She tells Howard that humanity is a team, sharing a common destiny, and this game is designed to make players understand that. But Howard isn't so sure. The memories from the game, especially the bloodshed and violence, are making him feel terrible. He remembers how intense and exhausting it was, and he's beginning to wonder if he should continue. AI-63 tries to reassure him. She acknowledges the difficulties, but reminds him that it's not always as bad as it seems. There were happy moments, too, like when Howard was lying in bed feeling a sense of peace and joy. That's when AI-63 shows Howard a memory of him sleeping beside Sabrina. Howard freezes, panic rising in his chest. He can't believe what he's seeing. He was lying next to Sabrina? He feels anger bubbling up as he demands to know why she's showing him this. It doesn't feel right. He wants her to turn it off, telling AI-63 to respect his privacy. AI-63, ever the neutral voice, simply tells him to relax. She reminds him that she's an emotionless AI, and her role is not to interfere with his feelings or judgment. Howard, still feeling uneasy, asks if Sabrina has these same memories in her real life. AI-63 responds calmly, explaining that whatever happens in the virtual world stays there. It's all confined to the game, with no impact on real life. Howard's suspicion grows. He starts to smell something fishy. He begins doubting whether he's dealing with a legitimate company or if there's something more deceptive at play. He wants to know how to get out of this place, how to break free. In response, AI-63 rubs her left eye, triggering the system menu. She tells Howard that if he wants to contact her in the real world, he needs to do the same. But before Howard can ask more questions, AI-63 mentions the rewards for completing the challenge. She asks if Howard wants them now, offering him a chance to receive them. Curious, Howard asks about the rewards. He wonders if it's just some basic merchandise, but AI-63 assures him that it's better than nothing. She asks if he wants her to mail it to his workplace, and Howard agrees. He provides her with the address, unsure of what to expect next. Suddenly, Howard gets a shock. Something strange happens, and he asks, "What just happened?" He realizes that AI-63 is no longer present. She tells him not to panic, explaining that the system is just deciding on the right reward for him. Howard is confused and a little anxious, wondering why the system is taking so long. As he waits, the atmosphere around him shifts. Howard notices something eerie, the feeling that he's being watched. He looks around and sees two large glowing eyes staring at him in the darkness. A wolf, massive and threatening, looms before him. He remembers this moment, the wolf he fought earlier in the game. But then, something changes. A figure appears, a man coming toward the wolf. The man hurls a stick, hitting the wolf with incredible precision and killing it. Howard stands there, watching the scene unfold. The system announces that the reward has been granted, excellent hunting skills and accuracy. Howard stands there, watching the system announce his reward, excellent hunting skills and precision. It's a moment of accomplishment, but before he can truly savor it, an alarm blares. It's 7 a.m., Monday, September 4th. Howard jerks awake, his body in his bed. Confused, he tries to piece together what happened. He hadn't clicked the quit the game button, so why did the system just wake him up? He looks to his left, searching for the familiar system interface, but it's gone. Everything is blank. Was it all a dream, or had something gone wrong? He sits there, lost in thought, questioning if he's still dreaming or if it really ended. Suddenly, AI-63, the system's voice, speaks up, asking what happened and why Howard was pulled out. The system responds, explaining there was a malfunction. The memory control function crashed, and the error code ZS001 has been triggered. The system reassures AI-63 that more information is on the way. AI-63, still processing, looks around and spots Sabrina. She's holding a knife in her hand, and there's a person lying on the floor. AI-63 asks the system why there seems to be a new dream within an existing one. The system suggests finding a way to fix the issue, but warns that no patch can be found in the database. AI-63, frustrated, questions why it's being asked to write a program to fix the problem. After all, she's just a robot assistant. Why must she take on the responsibility? Back with Sabrina, she suddenly wakes up in her bedroom. Two women are standing by her, asking if she's okay. Sabrina begins to cry, confused and disoriented. The women gently ask what happened, and Sabrina tells them she had a long dream, but the details are fuzzy. She wonders why they're even in her room. The women exchange a worried look. One of them admits she can't remember anything at all, explaining that she was sleepwalking. Sabrina is shocked by this revelation. The woman continues, saying Sabrina had grabbed a knife from the kitchen and was mumbling something, though no one knows exactly what. Looking down, Sabrina sees that she's still holding the knife. The woman explains that she was so scared Sabrina might hurt herself that she called the secretary, Miss Gua, for help. Miss Gua arrives and, seeing Sabrina's confusion, suggests that Sabrina take a few days off work to recover. She gently explains that what Sabrina experienced wasn't just a dream. It was something far more unsettling. Meanwhile, Howard is now in a completely different setting, surrounded by people. He's moved, a shoulder bumped into another guy. The guy turned, clearly annoyed, and snapped, "What the hell?" Howard quickly responded, telling him to watch out, but in his mind, he was thinking about how hard it was to move through this crowd. The space felt tight, and Howard found it hard to focus. He apologized and continued walking, realizing just how chaotic things felt. There were so many people around, it was hard to read the room or even focus on real life. Not far from him, a man was cooking something over a fire. The man looked up and saw Howard, asking if he was here as usual. Howard gave a half-shrug, replying, "I guess." The man then told him that his relative had asked him to find a match for his daughter. He went on about how lovely she was and jokingly asked, "Why don't you let me set you up with her?" Howard didn't know how to respond to that, but smiled politely. As Howard warmed his hands by the fire, the man noticed and asked if he was feeling cold. Howard, a bit distracted, said, "It's just a bit chilly." But deep down, Howard couldn't shake the feeling that he was still trapped in that dream. The coldness from it felt so real that even now, in the waking world, he could feel it. The man, sensing Howard's hesitation, offered to arrange a meeting with his daughter if Howard was interested. Howard, not wanting to engage further, politely told him that he already had a girlfriend. The man nodded, and Howard couldn't help but reflect on how his life was shifting. The world seemed to look different from all these different angles, and it felt like everything was changing all at once. After the brief interaction, Howard made his way to work. It was 7:50 a.m. He had made it just in time. It felt like it had been forever since he'd last stepped into Grand Glory Limited. He couldn't help but feel like he was running out of time, like he'd almost missed the opportunity to get back on track. As he walked through the doors, someone clapped a hand on his shoulder. It was Donald, an old acquaintance. Donald called out his name, and Howard grinned, saying, "It's been a long time since we last met." Donald looked at him, a little surprised, and asked, "Didn't we just have dinner last night?" Howard, still a bit out of it, nodded, admitting, "Yeah, I was wasted last night. Maybe I'm not sober yet." Donald seemed a bit confused by Howard's comment. Howard quickly realized that, for him, it had actually been 6 months since they'd last seen each other. Donald's face turned serious as he warned Howard, "Watch your back. Don't make mistakes at work. The department is under a lot of pressure right now. Some people are even getting laid off, and worst case, the whole department could be shut down." Howard was caught off guard. That's out of the blue. What happened? Donald tells Howard that the company's board is planning to establish a new marketing department. Now, here's the twist. Their duties? Almost identical to what Howard's team does. The overlap is huge. But there's another issue. Mr. Wong. Howard and Wong? Yeah, they've never exactly gotten along. Donald is visibly nervous, telling Howard he's sure Mr. Wong will fire him first. But surprisingly, Howard doesn't seem bothered. He looks at Donald and says, "Who cares? I'm resigning anyway." For him, the world is too big and full of opportunities to be stuck following rules set by someone else. Donald is stunned. This isn't the Howard he knows. "You've changed," he says. And you know what? He's right. Howard has been different lately. The old him? He'd probably be whining by now, frustrated and unsure. But this time, it's like he's thinking differently. At work that day, Howard sits at his desk, trying to focus. It's been ages since he last felt this disconnected. He picks up his notebook, flips to a blank page, and starts jotting down what he thinks he's supposed to do. Call Oriental Limited. Call Peak Limited. Then he stops. Wait, is this right? Something feels off. He scribbles something down, then tears the page out, crumples it into a ball, and throws it into the trash. But suddenly, a strange thought hits him. He pauses. What was that feeling? Curious, Howard tears out another page, makes it into a ball, and throws it again. This time, his hand adjusts almost instinctively. It's perfect. The angle, the strength, it all lines up. Howard is stunned. "This is unbelievable," he mutters. It's like his body knows how to make every shot perfect. Panic starts to creep in, and he remembers something strange. AI-63. He recalls how AI-63 told him he hadn't yet received a reward for completing a challenge. Is this the reward? A skill learned from a dream? Howard doesn't have much time to think. He decides to test it one more time. He tears out another page, rolls it into a ball, and this time throws it from farther away. But here's where things go wrong. The paper ball flies straight across the room and hits Mr. Wong. Howard knows it. He screwed up. Just like Donald said, he's made a huge mistake. In the office, they're buzzing with whispers. "Howard's done for," someone mutters. Another guy chimes in. "Yeah, he probably didn't even know. Didn't anyone tell him about the layoffs?" Someone else says, "What an idiot. The company's letting people go, and he's throwing paper balls around. They're relentless." "Good riddance," one says. "I never liked him anyway." Then the jabs get personal. "I heard he's buried in debt. Poor guy, it's almost pathetic." Donald looks at Howard and wonders what is wrong with him today. Wong tells Howard to sit. Mr. Wong, Howard's boss, is calm, almost too calm. He doesn't start talking right away. Instead, he takes a cup and begins pouring water, slowly, deliberately. Finally, he looks at Howard and says, "You know, you really shouldn't have underestimated me." Howard's taken aback. What's he talking about? He thinks, surprised. Then, in true Howard fashion, he cuts to the chase. "Let's get straight to the point," Howard says. He explains that over the last 2 years, he's devoted himself to this job. Sure, he made a slight mistake today, but if he's leaving, he's still entitled to receive his last month's salary on time. But Wong doesn't react the way Howard expects. Instead, he gives him a curious look and asks, "Are you sure you want to leave?" Howard freezes for a second. Wait, what's he getting at? He wonders. Is Wong hinting at something? Did he somehow find out that Howard had been bad-mouthing him online? After all, Howard was pretty sure he used a secret account. The tension breaks when Wong speaks up again, but this time, it's not what Howard was expecting. Wong tells him something surprising. "You know, Howard, I owe you many thanks. You've taught me so much over these last 2 years. Howard blinks, stunned. This was definitely not the scolding he had anticipated. Wong goes on to explain that the company is about to set up a brand new department, one led by the vice president, Mr. Liu. And here's the big news. Wong wants Howard to assist in the new team. At this point, Howard's mind is racing. "Mr. Liu? Who on earth is that?" he wonders out loud. Wong chuckles and explains, "Howard, just like me, Mr. Liu must have noticed your potential. He probably saw from the very beginning that you'd become a big shot one day. That's why you were given more tasks than others, so you could learn the ropes." Howard's still processing. Wong continues, "A capable man needs challenges. Without pressure, you'll never grow. The future is bright for you, Howard." Howard hesitates. Sure, this sounds like a great opportunity, but he'd already been thinking about quitting. He says, "Honestly, I was planning to resign." Wong's eyebrows shoot up. "Seriously?" he asks, almost shocked. He shakes his head and says, "Howard, you're not thinking this through. A great opportunity has just landed in your lap. And here's the kicker. News from Human Resources says that the average salary in this new department will increase by 20%. Later, Donald catches up with Howard and asks, "Wait, so you were transferred to the new department just like that?" Howard shrugs and says, "Yeah, pretty much." But then, with a hint of resignation, he adds, "To be honest, I hadn't figured out where I'd go after quitting. So I might as well just stay here a while longer." Just when Howard thought things couldn't get any more chaotic, a man storms up to him, yelling. The man's furious, shouting, "Why? Why him?" It turns out he's a team leader in the advertising department, a guy who's made huge contributions to the company. In his mind, he deserves this new position. He can't believe it. Howard, of all people, getting the opportunity? But before things escalate any further, a voice cuts through the commotion. A calm but firm voice. That's enough. The room falls silent. It's the boss. Everyone freezes. The boss turns to the man and says, "Mr. Liu, come in here and apologize. You've just embarrassed yourself." Mr. Liu, visibly stiff and frustrated, walks over. He mutters something about the vile vibes in the advertising department. Then, looking directly at the angry team leader, he throws out a challenging question. "Do you doubt my ability to select the right person for this position?" Suddenly, the man's panic sets in. "Of course not, sir," he blurts out, backpedaling quickly. The boss doesn't let up. "You should have been taught a lesson long ago," he says coldly. "You're always hasty. Reckless. This position needs to go to someone better." The man is stunned into silence. Then the bombshell drops. The boss announces, loud and clear, that Howard will be transferred to the new marketing department. Oh, and Howard's current work? It'll be reassigned to others, under the guidance of a new team leader. At that moment, Mr. Wong turns to Donald. "Donald, do you want to take over as the new group leader?" Donald's jaw nearly hits the floor. "What? Me?" But then, gathering himself, he quickly stands up. "Yes, sir. I'll do my best." The boss nods and shifts his focus back to Howard. "Howard, you don't need to work today. Pack your things and get ready for the marketing department." Howard simply replies, "Okay." As Howard starts gathering his things, he thinks to himself, "What is this feeling? Mr. Wong, Mr. Liu, they're all being way too nice to me." Before Howard can process any of it, Mr. Liu steps up again. "Oh, Howard, one more thing. There's a party for the staff of the new department after office hours. You should come. It'll be a good chance to meet your new colleagues and discuss your plans." Howard nods. "Got it, Mr. Liu." Then Mr. Liu turns to the rest of the office. "Listen up, everyone," he announces. "I don't know where you all heard these rumors about layoffs, but let me be clear. There will be no layoffs in the advertising department." The entire office breathes a sigh of relief. People start cheering. "That's great news," someone exclaims. One guy laughs nervously and says, "I was so scared, I even bought a train ticket to head back home." Mr. Liu shakes his head with a small smirk. "All right, enough. Back to work. I'll see you all later." As Mr. Liu leaves, Mr. Wong calls out, "Have a good day, sir." Howard watches him go, still puzzled. Who even is Mr. Liu? He thinks. I've never seen him before. So, why would he be so nice to me? Meanwhile, in his office, Mr. Liu flips through Howard's CV. He shakes his head, muttering to himself, mediocre. That's all he is. So why did Sabrina insist on giving him a spot in the new department? Donald stands before his team, looking frustrated. The department didn't meet the target for this month. Let's talk about it, but his words fall on deaf ears. One employee sits there casually, legs crossed, looking almost bored. Another stares off into space, clearly not paying attention. And a third, busy playing with his phone. Donald sighs to himself. They don't care at all. A man approaches Donald, smirking. Is this your first time leading a team? Donald doesn't deny it. The man continues. Well, it's obvious you need more management experience. He goes on, almost mocking him. Howard always said he'd jump ship to another company. If that happens, it's just going to be you and us left in this department. And let's face it, if you can't lead us, no one's going to have your back. Another employee chimes in, saying what everyone else seems to be thinking. What's the point? Whether we work hard or not, the results don't change. Why not just take it easy? Donald listens in silence. Leadership isn't as easy as it looks. Meanwhile, Howard sits at his desk, quietly talking on the phone with his mother. His mom asks softly, Are you coming home for the spring festival? It's been 2 years, Howard. Howard hesitates. Is everything okay? How's Dad? His mother assures him. Everything's fine. I know living in a strange city is tough, so take care of yourself. Okay. Howard smiles faintly. Don't worry about me, Mom. I'm doing great, actually. I even got a raise today. Soon enough, we'll clear the debt. His mother's voice cracks a little. You've been through so much for us, Howard. We owe you. Howard shakes his head, still smiling. It's fine, Mom. This will all be over soon. Suddenly, a voice interrupts Howard's thoughts. Excuse me, are you Howard? Howard looks up to see a young woman standing before him. She introduces herself with a friendly smile. I'm Sandy Day, team leader from the marketing department. I saw your picture while going through the payroll. Howard politely greets her, but he's caught off guard when she asks, "Are you planning to get your department together?" Howard doesn't answer directly, but thinks to himself, "The mansion in my dream. That's where Sabrina and I used to live." Sandy breaks his train of thought. Mr. Liu likes throwing parties at his place. Want to come along? Howard hesitates, but eventually agrees. Okay. Sandy gives him a quick warning. Just so you know, Mr. Liu is obsessed with cleanliness. You want to keep that in mind when you're there. Curious, Howard asks, "What should I pay attention to?" Sandy gives an example. For starters, clean your shoes before stepping inside. He hates dirty floors. Howard's mind drifts back to his dream again. The mansion and my bloody foot. He mutters, "I see." Sandy adds one last rule, "Oh, and don't go into any other rooms, especially not his bedroom." Howard stiffens. A chill runs down his spine as memories flood back. Sandy notices his pale face. "Hey, are you okay?" Howard snaps out of it, forcing a laugh. "Yeah, I'm fine." Suddenly, a commotion erupts nearby. Someone yells, "Stop him! Catch the thief!" Howard and Sandy turn to see a man sprinting through the office. Without thinking, Howard grabs Sandy's bag. "Howard, what are you doing?" Sandy shouts. There are important files in there, but Howard doesn't listen. He waits for the perfect moment, then hurls the bag through the air with incredible precision. Smack! The bag hits the thief square in the back. He stumbles, crashing to the ground. Howard and Sandy rush over, collecting the scattered papers. A woman approaches Howard, relief written all over her face. "Thank you so much. Nothing's lost thanks to you." Howard blinks, processing what just happened. He thinks to himself, did I really just hit the thief? Sandy grins at him, clearly impressed. "Howard, that was unbelievable. You nailed it perfectly. Can you teach me how to do that?" Howard scratches his head, a little embarrassed. "It's nothing special." Sandy shakes her head. "Are you kidding? You're amazing. That was incredible accuracy." Howard wonders to himself, where did she get all this energy? As they continue picking up the papers, Sandy laughs. "You're a hero now, Howard. I mean, this is our first time working together. I had to be polite. But now, I'm just being honest. You're incredible." Howard shrugs. It's not a big deal. The commotion settles as a young boy standing nearby calls out, "Hey, let's help them pick up the rest of the stuff." The woman nods gratefully. "Yes, we really should thank this young gentleman properly." Sandy thanked the lady. Howard stumbles across something unexpected, a card from Eggel Capital Limited. Howard's holding it, examining the details, when Lawrence notices and asks, "Is this card from our files?" Sandy, who's nearby, looks surprised and admits yes. She quickly explains, Eggel Capital Limited is no ordinary company. It's a massive deal. This corporation is one of their most important business partners. But then, she adds something else. Don't show this to anyone. Turns out, the card belongs to none other than Mr. Lawrence, a powerful figure. He's not just any businessman. He's the boss of one of the world's top 100 companies. Howard raises an eyebrow, intrigued. The world's top 100? The name seems oddly familiar. That's when Sandy drops another piece of gossip. She tells Howard that Ms. Sabrina, yes, the same Sabrina, might be dating Mr. Lawrence. And if the rumors are true, she's about to go on a cruise trip with him. At that moment, something clicks for Howard. He mutters to himself, that's right. In the dream, Sabrina had mentioned her boyfriend's name, Lawrence. Howard keeps telling himself, stop overthinking. It's just a game. But before he can settle down, Sandy comes up to him with news. A colleague texted her. The party is in the backyard of the mansion. Sandy seems to know the way. Let's go straight through the living room, she says. Then turn left, walk down, and take a right at the second fork. Howard follows her into the huge mansion. And as they walk, Sandy warns him with a smile. This place is so big, you might get lost. Finally, they reach the backyard venue. A few people are waiting, and one man, clearly impatient, asks Sandy what took her so long. Another man eyes her, while Sandy casually says to Howard, marvelous, isn't it? How did you find this place so quickly? It's like you're walking around your own house. Howard doesn't respond, but he feels a little out of place. Then he spots Mr. Liu and Sabrina. Mr. Liu gestures for everyone to hurry up and grab a seat. The whole marketing department is here. Let's begin the meeting. Sandy nudges Howard. Come on, let's sit at the same table. Howard feels embarrassed. Why is she sticking to him like this? He thinks to himself that everyone might start making assumptions. As they settle in, Sandy casually asks him, how old are you? Are you seeing anyone? Howard feels awkward. He notices Sabrina quietly watching their conversation. Mr. Liu clears his throat, bringing everyone's attention back to the meeting. As everyone knows, our company has 10 chain supermarkets. Now, our focus is shifting to e-commerce. Moving online is our new goal. Howard leans towards Sandy and whispers, Miss Sabrina also works in marketing? Sandy nods and explains. The marketing department was actually set up on Miss Sabrina's orders. She's more than just an executive officer. Her father is the corporate president. She's way more powerful than Mr. Liu. Howard is stunned. What? He had no idea Sabrina was the president's daughter. But then something else bugs him. Where did Mr. Liu come from? Isn't he a bit too young to be vice president? Sandy answers without missing a beat. Mr. Liu grew up with Miss Sabrina. They've been close since they were kids. Plus, he's talented, top of his class at a prestigious university. He's ambitious, hardworking. They'd make a great couple. Howard pauses. Then why did Miss Sabrina end up with Lawrence? Sandy shushes him quickly. Don't talk too loud. These rich people have their own lifestyles. I envy them sometimes, you know? Imagine being surrounded by successful business giants all the time. Howard smiles and says jokingly, well, good luck. If you ever get rich, don't forget to help me out. But in his mind, Howard knows the truth. Dreams stay in dreams. In reality, he's stuck with a debt of nearly $1 million. Sabrina? She's out of his league. The meeting wraps up, and Mr. Liu announces it's time for dinner. The atmosphere shifts as classical music begins to play. Sandy looks around, impressed. It's like we've become part of the upper class. Nearby, Mr. Liu asks Sabrina, do you remember the last time we danced? We were in high school. Sabrina smiles. Yes. How time flies. Howard watches them from his seat as a chef approaches their table with freshly cooked steaks. Sandy gasps. This steak probably costs as much as a month's salary. Howard grins. Can I meet your expensive steak? Sandy laughs and shakes her head. You sound like such a redneck. Forget all the bad stuff and enjoy tonight. Live with pride and dignity. Howard takes a deep breath. She's right. He glances back at Mr. Liu and Sabrina, who are now dancing together. Suddenly, a memory hits him. Sabrina, smiling at him one evening when they were drinking wine together. He remembers asking her if it was fake brand wine. She laughed and said, yes, but it tastes fine. Perfectly sweet. Sabrina glances at Howard too. Someone nearby whispers, what a sweet couple. Howard snaps back to reality, hearing chatter around him. The employees seem relaxed, enjoying the evening. People praise Mr. Liu, how well he treats the staff, how he and Sabrina have grown up together, always sitting next to each other in school. They're made for each other, someone says. Howard quietly thinks to himself, Mr. Liu seems like a good guy. Sabrina will probably have a happy life with him. But then he asks himself, will she? Before he can think any further, Howard suddenly yelps. He's burned his hand. Turns out, in his distraction, he touched the hot steak. Sandy scolds him. Are you an idiot? The chef just said it was freshly cooked. She grabs water and carefully pours it on his hand. Thank God it's not serious. It'll heal in a couple of days. Grow up, will you? Howard, embarrassed, thanks her softly. But now everyone in the room is staring at them. Someone teases. Looks like there's another couple in the marketing department. Howard jumps up. Wait, that's not what you think. But someone else shouts, congratulations. And Sabrina is looking at Hayward. That's when three men step into view, led by a black-haired man named Hans. With a sly smirk, Hans comments on the fun happening around them. He claims he heard Miss Sabrina might be joining the marketing department, and naturally, he came to congratulate her. But something has caught his attention. Mr. Lawrence's fiancée dancing with another man. Howard, watching the scene unfold, leans in to ask, who is this guy? Sandy quickly answers, Hans. He's the general manager for Capital Limited's domestic region. And here's the kicker. Lawrence likes him. Does he work for Lawrence? Howard asks. Sandy just shrugs. This whole thing feels awkward. Honestly, I don't know which side to take, she says. At this point, Lou steps up, trying to ease the tension. Relax, Hans. It's just a dance. Don't overthink it. But Hans doesn't let it go. Dancing at parties is normal, right? We're just trying to have fun. Sabrina finally steps in with her usual composure. She thanks Hans for coming, but reminds him this is an internal company gathering. If you want to talk business, she says, come to my office tomorrow. For now, maybe it's time you left. Hans smirks. Oh, there's no rush. Just a little misunderstanding. He insists he has nothing better to do and might as well join the party. Then, almost arrogantly, he adds, I'm a good dancer too. Sabrina, Care for a dance? This rubs Lou the wrong way. He steps up and says, Hans, Sabrina, and I are old friends. Don't you think it's a bit inappropriate to ask someone unfamiliar for a dance? Hans's patience is wearing thin. It's just a dance, he snaps. Stop overthinking it. It's not your place to worry about her. Sandy, watching all of this unfold, whispers, it's getting intense. I hope this doesn't turn physical. Trying to avoid escalation, Sabrina puts her hand on Lou's shoulder and says, Hans is our business partner, so let's be nice to him. Hans seizes the moment. Brilliant of you, Miss Sabrina, he says, offering his hand again. Sabrina accepts reluctantly, and, just like that, Hans sweeps her onto the dance floor. Sandy rolls her eyes. Did you see that? He swooped right in. Then, she adds, Mr. Lawrence has it all planned out. Long-distance relationships are tough, but Hans is now in charge of picking Sabrina up to meet him. As they dance, Sabrina keeps her distance. You don't have to press against me, she says firmly. Hans laughs. Fine, fine. I'll stop. But maybe you should stop pretending you're some kind of juggling circus performer. Sandy can't help but notice Lou on the sidelines. Mr. Lou must be furious, she whispers, but there's nothing he can do. Capital Limited is leagues ahead of his company, and he's way inferior to Lawrence. Meanwhile, Hans grows bolder, trying to get physical with Sabrina. But she shuts him down quickly. She takes his hand, smiles faintly, and says, You're not very good at dancing, are you? Why don't we call it a day? Hans scoffs. No, I'm just rusty. Give me a moment. Sandy, unimpressed, nudges Howard. Are you just going to stand there? Mr. Lou is acting like a coward, and this is getting worse. Hans, now clearly frustrated, mutters under his breath. Then, he does the unthinkable. He steps on Sabrina's foot deliberately. Sabrina stumbles. Her dress strap snaps. The room gasps. Lou panics, and Howard can't believe what he's seeing. Without thinking, Howard grabs a hot steak from a nearby plate and throws it, straight at Hans. It hits its mark. The steak lands on Hans's face. He screams in shock and pain, his eyes burned. Chaos erupts. Hans's two men step forward, their eyes scanning the room. Sabrina is falling, but Lou rushes to help her up. Everyone else? They're frozen, unsure of what just happened. Hans, fuming, shouts, Freeze! Find out who did this. His men scatter, searching for the culprit. Howard, meanwhile, tries to stay calm. One of Hans's men stares directly at him, but finds nothing. Howard got lucky. Sandy, standing beside him, whispers, Good thing I gave you half my steak earlier. Huh? Howard lets out a breath. Thanks, he mutters. Sandy grins. You're welcome. But seriously, you threw a steak at Hans? You got guts. Even Mr. Lou wouldn't dare offend him. Hans, still furious, demands answers. So what now, he shouts. Are you telling me a steak just appeared out of nowhere and hit me? Search harder. If I don't find out who did this, none of you will leave this room. Sabrina, calm and composed until now, suddenly slaps Hans, sending him straight to the floor. The entire room goes silent. Take your people and get out, she shouts. She's had enough. She can't stand Hans anymore. Howard watches the scene unfold in shock. Sabrina? Fierce? He never imagined her like this. Deep down, he's just relieved. Thankfully, she didn't hit him. But Hans is furious. He jumps to his feet and growls, How dare you? Sabrina doesn't flinch. Her voice cuts through the tension. Being humble and using a knife is courtesy. That doesn't mean you can mess with me. She adds, Don't forget, Lou, we're business partners. You'll see me often, so don't push me into calling the police. Hans freezes, clearly caught off guard. One of his men leans in and whispers something to him. Suddenly, Hans's rage melts away. Oh, no need to call the police, he smirks. I just wanted to drop by and say hi. I'll see you tomorrow. As Hans and his group leave, Lou turns to Sabrina, confused. Why did they retreat? What are they up to? Sabrina brushes him off, saying, I'm going to get changed. Howard assumes the party will end now, but then he spots Sandy Day. He greets her, Miss Day, but Sandy waves him off. Don't call me that. Just Sandy is fine. Howard laughs awkwardly and says they're being forced to leave because they've ordered too much beer. Doesn't she think so too? Sandy smirks, teasing. Finally, a more charming man than Mr. Lou. And single too. Perfect match. She's clearly eyeing Howard now. Howard tries to deflect. He admits he's not a great drinker and mentions he's broke. Only $400 left on his card, and he's waiting for his salary next week. But Sandy doesn't let him off the hook. She proposes a deal to keep things interesting. For every 3 glasses I drink, you drink 1? Howard hesitates, but agrees. His plan? Get Sandy drunk quickly. Less food, more beer. It's 1 a.m. By now, Sandy is completely wasted. Howard, trying to manage the situation, shakes her gently. Sandy, wake up. Where do you live? Sandy mumbles through her drunken stupor. I live in the far west desert. Howard sighs. Far west desert. She's too drunk to make any sense. And then she burps. Before Howard can react, Sandy collapses onto him, almost knocking him over. People nearby are staring, and Howard is visibly panicking. To make things worse, Sandy leans in, licking his face and trying to get physical. Howard pushes her away, shouting, "Get off me." At that exact moment, a waiter approaches awkwardly. Sir, I know this might be a bad time, but we're closing up. Here's your bill. Howard looks at the paper, and his heart drops. It's $400, exactly what's left on his card. Frustrated, Howard pays the bill, drags Sandy out of the venue, and carefully helps her down a dark staircase. Watch your step, Sandy. There's no light here, he mutters. Sandy, slurring, asks where they're going. Howard sighs. This is where I live. You can stay here tonight. Sandy giggles through her drunken haze. Oh, Howard, you naughty boy. We just met today, and you're already bringing me home? Howard shakes his head. It's not like that. I just can't afford a hotel room. And there is a man behind him who is watching them. Howard manages to lay Sandy on his bed, exhausted. But before he can relax, Sandy grabs his hand. Hug me, she murmurs. Howard pulls back. Just go to sleep, Sandy. He doesn't want to end up as gossip in the new department. But Sandy isn't done. She tries to sit up, rambling. I need to nail you before I pass out. Howard stares at her, panicking. What now? Sandy falls on him again, giggling as she tries to conquer him before she's too far gone. Suddenly, she starts pulling off her clothes, saying it's too warm. Howard grabs her hand, shouting, Stop. This is going to be a disaster. But Sandy teases, Oh, you feel warm down there too, huh? I get it. Howard, flustered, yells, No, that's not what you think. Finally, Sandy burps again and collapses on the bed, snoring loudly. Howard sighs in relief. She's asleep? He pulls a blanket over her. It's late, 2 a.m. to be exact. Howard, completely drained, decides he's had enough for the night. He figures he'll just curl up on the couch and try to get some sleep. But as he's settling in, he hears someone entering his home. Confused and a little on edge, Howard quickly gets up. He sees a man standing in front of Sandy. The man's eyes are fixed on her, and he says, She's gorgeous. Howard, now fully awake, steps in and asks, What are you doing here? How did you even get in? The man just looks at him, calm as ever, and motions for Howard to sit down. He casually mentions that he's had enough fun with Sandy and that it'd be a waste to just leave her there. He then adds, Why didn't you let me have my turn? Howard's patience snaps. He tells the man it's all nonsense and demands he leave. Now. But the man doesn't take kindly to that. In an instant, he lunges at Howard, knocking him to the floor. The man looks down at him with a strange respect, saying, You're tough. I thought we could have had a peaceful conversation, but I guess not. He tells Howard that he promised him a peaceful talk, and if Howard ever needs help in the future, he should let him know. But then the man does something that catches Howard off guard. He starts taking off Sandy's undergarments. The man, almost casually, offers Howard money. He says if Howard needs it, he can give him some once he's feeling better. It's been 20 years since he's been with any woman, and now he and Howard are both men, right? With a sickening grin, he tosses the undergarments in Howard's face. Howard, now disgusted, just mutters, You're sick,